Mr. Cahill.
We shall overcome. This land is your land. Give peace a chance. These are words that Pete Seegar uttered at different times in his career, not as a musician, but as a social activist. These are the words of a person who had great courage in his lifetime. As a child, as a young man, dabbled in communism, as literally tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Americans did. And unlike the previous speaker, I'll give the facts on Pete Seegar. Pete Seegar renounced Stalinism in its infancy. When he saw that the brand of communism that was being perpetrated on this world by Joseph Stalin was not the idealistic point of view that he was studying, he renounced it. And he separated that which was done by Stalin from that which was his and the philosophy of hundreds of thousands of youth. And yes, he protested the Vietnam War with 500,000 veterans, recently returning veterans of the Vietnam War in our nation's capital. One of those veterans was my brother Jimmy, the first and last protest he ever attended. My brother Jimmy was home from the Vietnam for just several months, wounded, multiply decorated, and wanted to be heard that this was a war that was not good for the United States of America. Pete Seegar has had a life of courage. My fear, Mr. Speaker, with this resolution is that he would be reduced to a troubadour, that he would be reduced to a banjo-strumming musician and nothing more. I am so grateful for my colleague for pointing out the prejudice that this man has endured his entire life. When he was called before politicians who were much smarter than everybody else in the 1950s and asked to testify, told to testify, he didn't invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. He invoked his First Amendment right to free speech and suffered an indictment as a result, was sentenced to 10 years in prison, served 4 hours of that sentence before it was overturned in a court of the United States of America. Throughout his life, he dedicated himself to helping those who could not help themselves, the poor, the environment, the birds and the bees, the river, the great river that he loved so much, the Hudson River, that in my youth was a sewer, and almost single-handedly because of the guidance, the leadership, the inspiration of Pete Seegar, is now considered one of the most beautiful rivers in the world. A river that's been reclaimed for all of humanity, for all of time, because of his good work. I have had the great honor, the great privilege, one of the highlights of my life, of standing on a stage with Pete Seegar and singing along. Because unlike most of us, even though he was in the business of singing, he preferred the sound of other people's voices. He preferred to be drowned out by those around him. So we celebrated the great heroes of our community together. We celebrated the great milestones of the environment together. We called on our brothers and sisters to rise up for causes that mattered. And today, we finally get an opportunity to honor a man who gave the vast majority of his 95-year life to the people of this country that he loved more than anybody I knew. And it is our great honor to stand here today. We shall overcome. We should give peace a chance. And this land is our land. This land is your land. This land is Pete Seegar's land.